And we are live in Studio B with Eric D. Johnson and Fruit Bats ahead of the show in Asheville tonight at the Mothlight. Live Studio B sessions on WNCW are made possible by Sierra Nevada Brewing Company. Welcome to Spindale.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we're loving the Gold Past Life and got a lot to talk about musically and otherwise, but could we get a song first?
Yeah, absolutely. Here's one from that one.
All right. Beautiful song. Beautiful guitar, too. Nice Fender there.
Thanks.
Yeah. Eric D. Johnson of Fruit Bats. I know that we know you pretty well. We've played your music for years. I've known your music since at least probably around 2005, which was still farther along into the game for you. You started...
Early-ish. Yeah, early-ish,
yeah. but still. Let's bring folks up to speed about the arc of Fruit Bats, because I have a feeling that you're out there enough that some people know you, but probably, like a lot of artists, are unfamiliar to some others. So let's kind of give a little broad stroke here with where you've been and what you've done, because Fruit Bats has been an ongoing, well, not always ongoing, project for you. You've had some film scores in between some years. You've also done work with other bands like Vetiver and the Shins. You've had some songs that were covered by artists like Jim James and the Decemberists. So fill in some of these gaps for us.
That all sounds really good when you say it all like that. I never really think about it. It's been sort of a very long, slow kind of thing. And I think people kind of just got to know my band this year and are sort of surprised that there's a previous 20 years, but it's kind of cool. So we've always sort of had this cultish fan base who are all at this point kind of my age. But now we have sort of this younger fan base too. So it's been really, and they know all the new stuff. So we play these fairly long 90-minute sets, and it's like a lot of the new stuff and a lot of the old stuff, and half the crowd is singing along to the old stuff, and half the crowd singing along to the new stuff, and they're each getting to know different parts of the catalog. And yeah, this past year has been the best and weirdest and most interesting year of the 20 previous.
We've got a mutual friend here in upstate South Carolina, John Bice, who is now an ex-con.
Yes.
In the band Ex-Cons.
He's not an actual ex-con.
That's right. But he was a Fruit Bat.
Yeah.
And when he lived in Chicago. Are you still calling Chicago home?
No, I've been out on the West Coast for like the past 15 years, but Chicago will always kind of be home in my heart.
Well, John says hello.
Yeah, and I'm excited to see him tonight, too.
Tell us about some of the covers and how did those come about? I know that you've toured with Jim James, and he adapted one of your songs. I think the Decemberists also did a straight-up cover of one of your songs. How did all that happen?
The Decemberists was a surprise to me. I think they did it they started doing it as a cover on tour, and then they played it at the Telluride Bluegrass Festival, and Jenny, their keyboard player, was sick at the time, and so they had Benmont Tench from Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers, who was literally playing a keyboard line that I wrote, and was one of the true honors of my life to see that go down. But yeah, they were covering that song for a little while. So, and then Jim and I have been friends for a long time, and he was covering one of my songs, which was actually a cover. It was someone else wrote it too. It was sort of a cover of my cover of a cover, and then he adapted one of my songs as well. Really, just kind of sampled it, but it was based on a loop from one of my songs, which then later I think a hip hop artist did a loop of his loop too. So again, this all kind of multi-generational stuff.
Well, you're out there, man. You're not going away anytime soon if this keeps happening.
I hope not.
We're live in Studio B on WNCW with Fruit Bats playing live tonight at the Mothlight in Asheville. You got a show tomorrow night in Durham at Motor Co.
Yeah.
And you're solo today, but got the full band for the shows.
Yeah, full band for the shows.
All right. Could we hear another song?
Sure.
Live on WNCW, Eric D. Johnson and Fruit Bats in Studio B this morning. Yeah, it's a great tune. Love that sound.
Thanks.
Eric D. Johnson, not to be confused with Eric Johnson of Archers of Loaf or another guitar player named Eric Johnson.
I know, so many of us, too many.
Speaking of guitar, our intern Josh Ming plays guitar, and I can see him in the session looking at the way you're playing guitar. I think he's copping some notes here.
Sweet. All right, good.
And this is all being streamed live on our Facebook, and you can catch this session on our YouTube channel later as well. Looking at the lyrics, listening to the lyrics of Gold Past Life, it's really striking. Some of the themes that they're at the center of it. It seems that questions of human existence are really running throughout all of these songs, I think. And there's a juxtaposition with a lot of natural imagery. Dreams are very prominent in this. Tell us about that.
I definitely write from dreams a lot too, because that's just truth, but it's a very weird poetic truth. So it's a great place to cull song ideas from. And a lot of times I'll have a dream about a song, even just a melody or something like that, right before I wake up, and the greatest thing ever about having iPhones now is the voice memo feature. I also write a lot while driving, which sounds very dangerous, but it's not. I just kind of keep that voice memo just right there, ready to go. It's like shower thoughts, you know? You always come up with the best stuff when you're out of the control of being able to sort of sit down and write it down. So, but yeah, this record's a little bit about nostalgia, but sort of rejecting nostalgia a little bit, and the sort of, I guess if you were to boil it down to sort of a cliche, it would be about living in the now a little bit, but obviously more than we could take me an hour to explain it. But yeah.
And it's the sort of the unspoken end to a trilogy of albums. I think maybe it was unintentional, but you've said something to that effect.
Yeah, I sort of kind of realized that once I got done with it. I was like, oh yeah, this is sort of like this is the Return of the Jedi here.
The cover, and it all ties in. I don't know if you had a direct hand in choosing the cover art, but Gold Past Life has a picture of a deer on a beach, which strikes me as not being the place where the deer should be. The deer should be in the forest, and it seems to go hand in hand with some of the question marks hanging around the album lyrically.
Well, it's a real photo, and my wife took it, and I was there when it happened. And it's on the Florida Keys, where there's one key, the Big Pine Key, sort of near Key West, where it's like a native deer to there. That's sort of like a subspecies that's really small, and they're very acclimated to humans, and they literally live on the beach like that, and you can just go right up to them and take pictures. But people keep thinking it's a taxidermied deer on the cover, or it's some sort of staged cover, and I'm like, it's very real. But it is a very dreamlike image too, because you can't tell the deer is actually very small, but it looks like a full size, buck. It's got the antlers and everything, but it's on a beach, and there's a lawn chair, and
yeah. Well, stylistically, musically, this record is an evolution in your sound. Tell us about working with Tom Monahan and the sort of the approach, because this has a very different feel to, say, Absolute Loser or some of your previous records.
Yeah, I mean, Tom and I have worked together for a long time, and we sort of have. My writing is very intertwined with demoing and then subsequently recording. So I usually use the studio as a writing tool to start by myself. So, and I think I've gotten better at that as the years have gone on. So Tom and I have worked on 4 records together, and this is sort of the culmination of our language that we have together a little bit. But I usually start things off by myself, and my stuff is. I'm not like going to sit down with an acoustic guitar and a tape recorder guy. I have to sort of have like a drum beat that I write. Like it's very important for me to get lyrics down to a tempo first. And Tom's really into that too. He works a lot with Peter, Bjorn, and John, so he's got this kind of like Swedish pop side to him. But I'm very Midwestern and have this kind of Americana thing. So it's a weird little mashup when we get together. So he's a little bit more of a pop guy, and sort of more of a Midwesty guy. So, yeah.
We're live with Eric D. Johnson and Fruit Bats on WNCW. Let's hear another one.
Cool.
Fruit Bats live in Studio B on WNCW. And another one from Gold Pass Life, if I'm right.
You are correct.
All right.
I think I'm going to go all from that one.
All right.
Because why not?
That's a solid record.
Yeah.
And you've got enough of, enough music under your belt now that you can look back and see some differences in the way that you've made your music. I think just my own self, how I relate to music now is different than the way I related to music 20 years ago. How is it for you?
Oh, yeah. And it's way different. And it is weird hearing songs from when I was 23, now that I'm 43. And I appreciate them, but I'm definitely a different person than I am now, or than I was then. And it's sort of strange having a record of that story from that time. It's great, but it's also like sometimes I don't want to speak that language anymore. So, but it's good that I'm still able to. I have a bigger platform now in my 40s for some reason than I did then. But sometimes I'm like, it would have been really fun if I was selling out shows then, but maybe I'm appreciating it more now, I think.
Do you ever listen to some songs from that era and think, that maybe I would do it differently, or you would want to go back and do them again?
Constantly. Yeah. It was like Will Oldham did that whole re-record of all his songs. I kind of always think about doing something like that. But yeah, I was just I was not as good as a songwriter back then. I had some sort of gumption, I think, but when I hear back now, I'm like, I should have finished that. I was like I was a bad student not finishing my homework or something sometimes. But some of those songs have an immediacy to them that I think people can appreciate. But I'm a little more into craft now.
I'm sure everybody would love to be, big when they're 23. Not everybody gets to do it that way. I mean, slow burn. There's a lot to be said for that.
Yeah. That's I've definitely had the slow burn, so it's good. Sometimes I'm mostly very thankful that I'm doing well now.
Thinking about some of your work outside of Fruit Bats, like we alluded to earlier, tell us about a little bit more about the soundtracks that you've done, because that's intriguing. I know that's a great line of work for artists, whether they're still full-time in their own projects or if they just kind of take a side road. How did all that work out?
I, like many things, blundered my way into it a little bit by I had a friend who's a director. He got to do a feature, and I sort of begged him to be the soundtrack guy, even though I had no experience and but I was like, it just seemed like a sort of an opportunity at the time. And then he ended up hiring this composer who's a very established, very well-respected composer, who then proceeded to, I think, just totally not work out. So, and they worked for a long time, and they kept just going down dead end roads with each other until it was way too late. And then he called and said, "I need you." And I was really excited, and I did it. And I sort of just through that ended up, it just kind of took off from there a little bit. And I shouldn't say it took off because I haven't done a ton since then. I'm usually touring half the time. But yeah.
I imagine that would your love of the studio would be right in sync with making film scores, because you're probably working in a studio. This is not a live situation.
It's kind of how I learned to work in a studio was through that, because that was like 12 years ago now that I started doing that. So I've gotten better at songwriting because I've gotten better at having to record myself. But at the same time, it's a totally different language too. A lot of it is you're interpreting a non-musical person's musical vision a lot of times, which is really great. It's a total puzzle. And when you return to writing your own songs, you have this whole different outlook on how music works. So it's they've influenced each other a lot, but it's also a totally different muscle that you're exercising.
What else is in the future for Fruit Bats?
I don't know. We're still going. So yeah. I'm trying to just stay a week ahead for now. So
that's always good.
Yeah.
playing at the Mothlight in Nashville tonight. Tomorrow night at the Motor Co. in Durham. You got a solo gig coming up for Mountain Stage.
Yeah, on Sunday. So this is good. I'm like, this is what it's going to sound like on Mountain Stage on Sunday.
Eric D. Johnson of Fruit Bats live on WNCW. Can you give us one more?
Yeah, sure.
Wrapping up our session with Fruit Bats on WNCW live from Studio B. Eric D. Johnson, it's great to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Looking forward to hearing more and another Fruit Bats record before too long, I hope.
Starting on one very soon, actually. So, yeah.
Wonderful. Live Studio B sessions on WNCW are made possible by Sierra Nevada Brewing Company.